go ahead and call the meeting to order. Rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Dave moves. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mike. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. On the presentation of the bills, everybody had a chance to look. I am going to pull out the HEDC check 25991, and we'll talk about that later for approval. If so, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Mike. All of those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next item of business is Commissioner's Report. We'll start with Nicole.
Okay. I have nothing personally to report, as I see the people in the room that will do the reporting on my behalf today. So I have nothing to report.
Okay, Paul?
I've got a couple things. I did attend the MRES Municipal Power Leadership Academy, a real big name there. Classes down in Sioux Falls. It was very informative. I really appreciated the city lets us do that, because there's a lot of great information there. If you ever have the opportunity, I really think it's a good deal. A lot of things to follow up on it with Jim and Ashley as we go forward. HEDC, we had a meeting on last week, I believe it was, and we visited a little bit about the grant project. It's also on the agenda. We'll probably follow more up on it as we get to that point on the agenda. But basically, a committee was formed to pursue that with the city. Beautification, I think Levi has got some stuff on that later on the railroad park. But other than that, that's all I have.
Mike?
Nothing.
Dave?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay. Paul went to MRES, and I went to the League of Cities last weekend. As far as the prairie dog funds, it sounds like we will be getting those. It'll just be later on. The buckets are filling up, just slower than anticipated, but it said the way it looks, it should happen. When we were talking about the demolition grant and things that we were looking at there, the state is also looking at a project that they're proposing. It's supposed to be coming out, or they're going to plan to bring it to the legislators. The city would have to apply for it. We'd be in the tier 2, and basically, if we'd apply, we'd get $35,000 plus $10,000 for a housing study to look at 12 properties. And then there's 32 cities in that tier, and there'll be 20 is what they're looking at. This is what they're potentially proposing right now. It could change a lot by that time. And what they're saying on that is the city would have to own it, then tear it down and give it to a developer to build back up. And I believe it's $35,000 per property, if I understood it right. And they're looking at like a 4-year time frame to get that done. That's what they're planning to put out there right now. Let's The other stuff I have is on the agenda. There's one item that I want you guys to digest and look at. Unfortunately, when I was looking through the budget more, looking through our financials more, Julie's been telling us for years, and Ashley's been saying it, we need to cut our spending, we need to work on it. So, I'm afraid I do have some bad news. So in this packet, it'll kind of give you an overview. The first couple pages is just talking about our goals and mission that we had already stated. If you go to page 3, this is what, if you look at it, it's comparing 2019 through 2022. Our total funds, our spendable funds, electrical, water, sewer, and garbage. And if they're, unfortunately right now, in our spendable funds, we're about $444,000 in debt. All of our funds that we have currently are supposed to be spoken for. That doesn't mean that we don't have money that we can't use. We have about $1 million in our sales tax fund that is for debt retirement and other things that is also put in this packet. We have about $9.5 million worth of loans sitting out right now. At the beginning of the year, we were at 460,000 thereabouts in our spendable fund, and today we're at 442 in the red, and that's of 10-1. And on page 4, you can kind of see how those numbers are trending. We have, like I said, a little over $1 million in our city debt retirement. On page 5, page 4 and 5, it talks about the priorities of what we can use that money for. On page 5 is our current projects that we have. Page 6 is our current spending through July in our general streets, water, sewer, garbage, and electric. Page 7, you can look at it. You'll see our total funds and where we are at over time. I will tell you that the 2020 is off a little bit, just because those numbers don't have our savings in there. So it's the numbers are correct. There's just more savings in our CDs and money markets. Page 8, I hope you guys take the time to look at that. I used AE2S's survey that we had for water, sewer, electric, garbage, all of those, and compiled those communities that are pretty close to our city size, and compared it with property taxes. The homes for the property taxes are a $200,000 home, and utilities is based off of that same average thereabouts of a family. So on the good note there, we are one of the lower communities for property taxes and utilities. That doesn't include heat in it. Page 9 is our current rates that we are at right now for all of our utilities. Page 10 is some proposed actions that I say we could do, which would be no new projects at this time. Finish up what we currently have committed to, or anyone that's going to be adding on, or emergency type situation, but no large projects at this point. I'm hoping that we can look at this and figure it out and get ourselves back into position by July of 2023, and I think that is a very good goal for us to do. We are not, like I said, we are not completely in debt. We are just going the wrong direction, and if we keep going this direction, we will be in trouble. I want to keep rate increases to the minimum. we'll have to look at, like I said, the debt retirement and sales tax to help relieve, because we can offset our utilities and payments. Also on that, just proposing that we possibly look at a $10,000 cap for approval. That anything over 10,000, it needs to come to a commissioner of that portfolio for approval, unless it's an emergency or utility cutoff to one of our customers. And then just, if that happens, then we have to notify commissioner within 24 hours so that we have an idea where we're at. When we look at it in the future, we probably have to look at our budget and put more structure into it if we're gonna spend 10,000 or say 40,000 on chlorine, and if we start going over that, then we need to look at and evaluate. Do we need to look at bidding out our garbage and recycling, because that price has went up over the last couple of years? We should look at our equipment and supply inventory and make sure that we know and have a replacement schedule so that we can be ahead of this. I'm looking at saying that we should look at this for March. And the rate increases down here is not saying that we should increase all of these. What I'm saying is, if we're gonna increase, this is possibly what we should do for that utility. And I'm not saying we should do them all at once. We need to look and evaluate at it. I'm not expecting an answer tonight. I think you guys in the community needs time to review and digest this, because this is a big issue that we're having, and come back at our next meeting to figure it out. And I would encourage any public input. I'll ask Ashley to put this up on the website so that the community can look at it. But email us, talk to the commissioner, call City Hall, mail us in something so that we get an understanding and we can get this fixed. Is there any questions from the commissioners? But this is where we're at financially. And I will say that I am to blame for part of this. I mean, we all looked at this before. I did take a deep dive into it more. Any questions? Okay. Move on to Jim.
We've got a couple of contractors in town, I'm sure you've noticed, we're chasing them around, and they're doing paving and some water repairs. And we've got several weeks of electric services to work on in the next 2-3 weeks, so we're busy. That's all I have.
JR, do you have anything today? Ashley? We can talk about that as the, on the BC.
Then I got nothing.
Steve, you're up.
Well, we got a couple projects on the agenda. The one we talked about last week a little bit, which was the stormwater master plan. And I don't know if you guys have had any discussions about that, if you want to make any decisions on progressing with that, or
I think we talked about our thought it might be better for us to look at tasks 1 through 5. That'd be the first 5 to start with, and then we could go from there. That would at least give us an overview of what's going on. It'll help us with our planning as we go forward with our streets and what we're gonna do there. Because at this point, I think we just, the budget, our finances, everything, we just have to get it, all the information we can at this point so that we can make our best decisions as we move forward.
Well, 1 through 5. The H would also, or H on page 2 we'd also have to do, which is a survey. And that's just an estimate number that we put in there because we didn't know how many manholes were missing from our original mapping we did back in 20 years ago. So there's probably going to be a few manholes we'll have to go out and survey the castings and pop them open, but I'm hoping we have majority of them, and maybe it'll just be a couple days instead of a week there. So that would go along with, we'd need that in order to do the task, start on tasks 1 through 5. Task 6 is really where we get into the modeling and coming up with the master plans and stuff, or to see how everything's flowing. Task 5 was, if we stop at 5, we're getting there. We have everything set up. We just haven't went through and, it would be a start on it. Could be a pretty good start. If we did 1 through 5 plus H from that sheet there at 10,000.
The only reason I say that is just so we have a starting point, and then we can reevaluate when we get to that point. Because I assume 1 through 5 plus H gets us through most of this surveying in town. The rest of it will be back in the office.
Yep, that'll get everything, at that point, everything's mapped and surveyed, so we have all the data collected, and then after that, it's just a matter of going through and run scenarios and modeling and stuff.
Yep. Thoughts, concerns?
So are we looking at 90,100? Is that what we're looking at?
Yep. Which if we, like I said at the last meeting, if we went up to that $5 when we go to increase our water and sewer rates for the USDA part of it, if we went up the rest, in a year we'd have that first portion paid off, and then we could move on from that or see where we're at. So.
Well, you think about that one. The other project was the I-29 sidewalk, which we're more committed to getting that one completed because that's tied to the overpass or pedestrian overpass, and that's 48,000.
We got a grant that has to be used for that in a certain amount of time, doesn't it?
Yep. Oh, we have.
That grant?
What this is they're going to put the pedestrian overpass in, and then DOT is going to pay for 80% of the sidewalk. The city will pay for 20% of the sidewalk and all of the engineering. So in order to do this, what DOT wants is they want this sidewalk scheduled along with the pedestrian overpass, so they all go in at the same time or close to the same time.
And the sidewalk goes from
Be right by Onstead Twitchell to up to the overpass, and then from the overpass.
sidewalk that's there.
Right.
Yep, and then it'll go on the other side out to Riverwalk, connecting them all up.
And that is the more important one of the two.
If you had to pick one to spend on, that one's kind of committed to already, but
Yeah, if you're working grant money.
So all we're responsible for is the 20% of the sidewalk.
We're 20% of the sidewalk plus the 90. I can't remember what the total.
it was
was.
a 48,
Or
which gets
48.
us through bidding, and then after bidding, once we find out who the contractor is, we'll have to set a additional fee for, construction observation while they do the work. But,
'Cause- yeah, because the grant doesn't cover our engineering firms, our
No.
engineering costs.
they leave that out so that I get to sit up here and squirm.
Right?
But this is a DOT project, so the reason why the fees seem kinda high for a sidewalk is we gotta follow all the hoops of, DOT and their submittal processes and their bidding processes.
So the grant has already been applied for?
Yeah.
Applied for it approved for the 2024 building season?
Yep, 24.
And it's 20% of the 48.5?
No, 20% of 200 and some, depending on how much, what the sidewalk costs. A couple months ago, DOT came and they said they're gonna extend the sidewalk out a little bit farther, and they're gonna pay for that still at 100%, so the amount is getting reduced, but this original estimate was around 200,000, and that was elevate COVID, pre-price increase for everything. So then at the time they did 80% of 200,000, and since then they've removed the cap. So they'll pay for 80% of whatever the sidewalk ends up being. So if it's ended up being 300,000 or whatever it is, they'll,
It was like right mid-COVID, cause it was literally like 2 months after I started. It was due the end of December of 2020. So it was before all the price increases and all that.
And we're hoping if we move forward with it now, we can bid with DOT, so the project could be kind of put together, so that might help save some costs. So if you want to approve that or move that forward, I'd entertain a motion for that task order.
So moved.
Paul moves,
Second it.
second by Dave. Any other discussion? Nicole?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Any yes for me? Motion carries.
thanks. The first thing that DOT wants is November, and then they're gonna want, I think the plans put together by January, if I remember right, December, January, somewhere in there. So we're on track. Now we got this approved, we'll follow their schedule and keep on track of it.
And I assume the rest of you want to hold off on the other project for right now.
Correct.
Keep it on our back. Put it up on the shelf. Don't throw it away.
Okay.
Stormwater master plan, right?
Correct. Yep. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
We'll go to the beautification tickets. There really isn't much move forward on that one, except for we did get a note from, and I did talk to Joyce Gilbertson on last week, and when I talked to her, she really couldn't give me a timeline. We had given her till October 1st, for this first meeting. She said that she had COVID and she hadn't been in there, but they didn't have a timeline as far as when an auctioneer would come in. Don't have a timeline as far as when the stuff is gonna go out. She did call in today, and Sarah took the message, and her grandson Josh is gonna take over and take everything out, and get it contracted for an auction. And they're getting a company from Faro to come and pack everything up. May be able to do it mid-October or November.
I'm game to let her do it. You know, we're moving ahead slowly, but
Would you guys like to set another deadline?
Well, once winter hits, it's gonna get shut down, I'm sure.
Great.
yeah, that's gonna be before it, so. December 1st. If she's gonna have an auction possibly.
Because the next step would take or winter months to get done, because it'll be the hearings and the process of getting the building condemned. Do I have a motion then for December 1st for the new deadline?
I'll make the motion.
Mike moves, is there a second?
Second it.
Seconded by Dave. Any other discussion? Mike,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
And a yes for me. All right. Sure you guys really want to do this one next. Final budget approval. Ashley and I are going to have to spend a little bit more time looking at this, and I think we're going to have to expand on these as we go. But we can revise it after we submit it.
Right, then any changes that happen, anything that comes up, then at the end of the year, we do what's called a budget amendment. So at the end of 2023, anything that happens out of the ordinary or extra or anything that changes our spending, we just do a budget amendment at the end of the year.
And I'm not saying that we change the numbers necessarily, it's mostly gonna be, for example, if we go into, say our capital projects, or, that's probably a bad example. If we go into the highway department, can we say what we're spending more on our transfer, or on our expenditures, and instead of just saying total expenditures? So there's maybe a line item for everything a little bit further, just so we have a little bit more clear understanding where we're at on everything. That way, when we're looking at this, we're not just throwing a dart at the target trying to see if we're gonna hit it or not. Hopefully we can try to budget a little bit more on this stuff. The biggest number that we need and what Glenda needs is the general fund and how much we're levying for the general property tax, which this year will be 300,000.
Hey, Leland, I have
Yeah.
a question. With HEDC,
Can you step up to the mic, please? Thank you.
on 520, or 532, on the revenues,
For Kingman Sewer, you mean? That's 532.
right,
Is that the one you're, okay.
right. Where does the money that HEDC goes to this project, where does that go into?
That goes into this fund and then transferred out to make the bond payment once a year.
Okay, so it doesn't show on the income side of it?
No, well.
It doesn't necessarily, it showed up on the 2019 one, but it could be on the transfer ins instead of the miscellaneous where it said HEDC payment.
We have a separate HEDC fund,
Yep.
and so if it has to come out of that fund, it would actually be a transfer in,
Okay,
not an actual, line item for a
Okay.
deposit. Does that make sense?
well, yeah, because it shows it back in the other years.
And depending on who did the budget. But if it's coming out of another fund, it needs to be shown coming out of that fund as a transfer out, and it needs to be shown as coming into
Okay,
the fund it's
just
going
over-
into as a transfer in.
Just so
Does that
that
make
it's
sense?
getting,
Okay.
comes through.
But that's where it's going for the bond payment, which is,
Then I have a question on
62.
213,
which one?
213, expenditure of 6,000 HEDC. I think it's an expenditure, I don't have that page with me.
Oh yeah, 213.
There's a $6,000, I believe, expenditure.
So that is, if you look at the revenue side, that's what would be coming in. And then the expenditures going to HEDC,
For what?
those are the payments that we've been sending for the lodging.
Oh, for lodging.
For the lodging tax. Because there's two separate checks that you guys, that it goes to HEDC.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So that's, the 6,000 is what they're projecting, which in reality, it should be 3,000.
Right, that, yeah. 'cause I-
It should be in and out, there shouldn't be.
Right, I'm
But-
not sure why we did that.
Then with the other case, what we need to do is figure out why this is in the red also, and why it keeps going that.
Okay,
Because it should be same in, same out.
exactly.
And that's,
I didn't know where the 6,000
right,
was related to, 'cause I didn't, we don't do any, you know,
no, it should be $3,094, what it should be.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Is there any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve our 2023 budget?
Do you want me to make that change?
Change.
It has to be approved by the 6th, right? 10th.
And this is our last meeting before then.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? I'll second. Second, moved by Dave, seconded by Mike. Is there any other discussion? Dave?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. And a yes for me. Thank you. Like I said, we'll have more to come as we can get more time to work on getting into this a little bit deeper. I assume on the paving project, we don't have any updates from that.
I have nothing to report on that.
Okay. Should we go ahead and take that off the agenda until January?
I would say yes.
Okay. Let's do that.
The only thing I got a guy coming in to look at some for chip sealing, but that's about all I have, you know, so.
Okay.
It's citywide paving you want off till January.
Yeah, we'll just hold back and revisit that.
And as soon as he contacts me to come to town, I'll get together with Jim and
Okay. Community Foundation, JR, I don't think we've heard anything. I think we'll probably do the same thing with that one. We'll hold off till January, or unless we hear something.
So we're gonna move that one off.
Yeah.
What's being done with it? Still waiting on Tony, or?
Correct. Still waiting on Tony and the Community Foundation to revise their plan of, in short, how the funds will be held for the indoor swimming pool. Really, in our case, it doesn't affect the city so much, but they proposed the city get involved, and now we're waiting on them to see how they want to handle the funds.
We could technically ask for the funds at any time, whether or not the board would approve it, but they're not approving putting it into the Community Foundation and sitting there until we get enough to look at a pool. So. Railroad Park. I have great news. You see in your packet, we have a lease agreement for Railroad
that.
Park for $0.
good job.
So that is complete. Like I said, one of the things that we have to do for that requirement is we have to look at a fence. I didn't see a timeline necessarily on that, but I didn't read the 500 pages of it yet.
I did.
That's why we have you.
Yeah, I will note that on page 7, 11C, it notes that within 30 days of this agreement, we will have a fence constructed. So I'm thinking we probably need more time on that.
Okay,
I actually I have some comments on this to go through, or I can just send them to you as well. But that was definitely one of them that stood out of, I don't know if that's.
Not at this point in time.
Yeah.
With that, I'll reach out to them and see if we can get an extension on the dates of that. The other thing that I was thinking on that, and I'll bring it up at a beautification meeting next week, is should we start some type of campaign or fundraising efforts to help pay for that fence? And I was wrong. I think when I told you guys 80,000, it's only about 40,000 was the bid that came in, between 30 and 40. But it is progress. So we are, and it came in at $0. So I was happy with it.
Have you got a quote for the fence that we were talking about, or?
I did.
You know, you kind of know what we're looking at potentially down the road doing with the park. Is there anything in that lease agreement that would maybe curtail those plans? Did you notice?
There's three main changes I'd say that we'd want to request from the railroad. The first being is, this is basically an at-will lease for the railroad. I have no reason to suspect why they would cancel it, but I have seen other leases where they put a limitation. They can only cancel it if they need it for railroad purposes. So, well, they're never gonna need it for railroad purposes, means they'll never cancel it on us, unless we're in default, of course. The limitations of the building, which says we're having a fence up in 30 days. And then there is one item in here which notes that any people that go on the property must complete the safety orientation and have the certificated badge from BNSF. I don't know how they enforce that or what kind of teeth they give behind that, but I don't think that's very feasible for us, because that would be anyone that goes on that property. So, other than those few items, everything else looked fine in the lease to me.
Fine for what we're looking at potentially doing.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Just trying to find that fence.
Whenever, it don't matter.
I want to say it was right around 30, like I said, between 30 and 40,000. I will get that sent out to you guys. That was my fault. There's no updates on the mural. I think we could probably take that off as long as it's held in with the beautification when we get that to one of the commissioners. Hillsboro Day drinking. What did we say, the first of the year?
First of the year.
Yep, so we can take that one off until January. Demo grant collaborations. I know things, you said there was a committee?
Yes, there was a committee put together, and Gary can expand on this if he needs to, but there was a committee put together that was gonna reach out to yourself, and there was 4 or 5 of you, I think. So once they get together and kind of go through the finer points and what HEDC wants to do and what they would be asking the city to do, then at that point they'd bring it, we'd be able to present it to the city commission and see if they want to do anything with it.
We just basically just need to sometime set up a time to
Okay,
talk about it.
I'll be in contact. I know we talked about it last week and then I ran out of time.
Not really.
All right, the landfill, JR had a chance to look and revise that agreement. Jim, did you have a chance to look at it? And John, and everything looked okay? Okay. Do I have a motion then to approve the new landfill agreement?
I'll make the motion.
Dave makes the motion. Mike seconds. Any other discussion? Dave?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And yes for me. The FEMA disaster relief grant, we'll keep working on that. In this task order that Jim sent out, there is one for the 60-inch repair underneath 81, so that would go under that project. And then, Dave, did you find out anything more from
On the bridge?
on the bridge?
The city owns the bridge. The county takes care of the inspections and the paperwork.
Okay.
That's what I was told from the road superintendent.
So if we want another inspection, he would be willing to line that up so that we can make sure to get it. Cause
There was an inspection just done on it.
All he needs is the most recent inspection, and I can double check tomorrow, cause I have a weekly meeting with him. All he needs is the most recent inspection and any, prior work that's been done on it, but I will get more information from him tomorrow when I have my weekly meeting with him at 7:30 in the morning.
Last inspection was done in 2020 that I have paperwork for. They just completed an inspection, but we haven't got the report on it yet. They do it every 2 years.
So it's
And-
probably done after the flood, so
Yeah.
we should have one before and after that.
And the only thing I have on any work done, and Jim, you might be, in 98, they replaced some plates and stuff in there. Do you think that's the last time that,
Yes, I think so.
and that was when Mark was the auditor? I found a
They-
report.
I think they put some plates in, repositioned some rockers and had it jacked up.
Yeah. But I also found, this was in the banner in 2020, that the governor added that bridge to his 21 to 23 budget for, I'm not sure if it's for replacement or for repairs. I'm not sure where that, if it was approved, or, we probably would have found out if it was approved, but. So we could check into that, see where that's sitting at too. But I can get that inspection report for you. I'll have it for you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's all I have on the bridge right now. Still standing, so
Anything else, Ashley,
it's a good thing.
on that one?
Nope, just need that inspection, and then I sent over, the repair stuff, the information and the coordinates to Kevin with FEMA for the culvert. So that should this will put us well over the threshold of what we needed to, so, and it's due, I can't remember the exact date, but everything needs to be into him by, this month, the end of this month sometime, but I'll get the exact date from him tomorrow.
Thank you, Ashley. Next, we have the Breen Nelson Water and Sewer Extension. So I'll ask you guys to come on up.
Should I give just a little bit of,
Sure.
okay. I don't remember if it was last fall, but again this spring, Chuck Breen approached me. He and his wife, Megan's daughter, Annie, and her husband were thinking of building a house south of Chuck and Megan's property. He asked me some questions on possibilities of utility hookups. We went over a couple options. Kind of left it at that. His house builder did contact me, and I sent him some information. I didn't hear much more about it. Ben Nosted from Nosted Brothers. Brad Nelson had contacted him. He and his wife were having issues with their septic system at their home, which is right across from where Annie and her husband want to build. That kind of set off a red flag. I kind of left it in Breen's ballpark at that time, but in lieu of eliminating that, well, I think it's the last septic system we have within the city limits. I went over Ben some options that we had talked about with the Breens. And then at that time I said, well, maybe you just get all parties together, get some estimates, and if you want to approach the council and see if there's anything that they would be willing to do to help. So with that being said, I'll let
Whoever wants to, or if all.
Yeah, and in lieu of this, my daughter Annie and Austin are gonna be building the house, and Brad is our neighbor, so, and appreciate the, city commission listening to us tonight about this. So, as we're looking at that lot, it's been green space, for the 30 years that I've lived there, and other people had asked sometimes about building there, and, so with Annie and Austin building a house there, the timing was just right for Brad and Aubrey to also find out if we could work together to bring both adequate sewage, but also water and sewage for Annie and Austin's place. So kind of investigated precedents in the past of what has the city been able to help out with. And usually it sounds like it's been the main, bring the main up to Nelson's, and that's one cost. And then from that spot to Nelson's would be one project that Nelson's would pay for, and then the extension from that same spot out to a curb stop would be another expense. So, and I think you have some of the breakdown of the prices there, so, and Brad. So basically, I believe it's about 68,000, give or take, to bring that main from the corner down, bring it up north. And then it's about another 6,000 for Nelson's to bring it to a curb stop, and about 30,000, both water and sewage combined, to bring it for Annie and Austin's house. So the request is that Annie and Austin would pay the 30,000, give or take, plus Nelson's would pay the 6,000, and then the city would hopefully help out with what in other spot under the road, and that'd be about 68,000.
So you're just asking for the sewer, not the water extension from 3rd and 6th all the way up?
Asking for, I believe it was, if the price was water, both, to bring it to that, if we look at that price, I thought, unless I'm mistaken,
That looks like it's for the sewer,
sewer alone.
and I'm guessing.
And the 13 was the,
Pardon?
the 68 was the sewer and the 13 was the water.
Correct.
I guess
Okay.
I didn't see that.
And
And
that blended with the 17 for the sewer, so.
Okay,
I think
so
the reduction in cost for the water was because they were already digging the
they were already
trench.
digging that
They
same
were already
trench,
there
and
digging
they're
the
gonna
trench.
share that
Otherwise, I'm assuming that number would be much higher.
larger. Yeah.
So it'd be
So really, Annie and Austin would be paying for water from the beginning all the way to the end, I guess.
Correct.
I did not realize that up till now, till you said that.
So the one concern that I have, and I don't know if there's been precedents or not, because I think we've been all over the place in the past. Because there is a resident in town that had to pay from the corner, and he had to do his own sewer line, so through the street, and we didn't bring the main to him. And there's 2 residents, if I know correctly.
Yeah. I think the one you're referring to, if I remember right, it didn't get replaced, but it was repaired.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure what the
And
present
he was-
state of it is.
And he had to be, what I've heard, what he had told me anyways, was that he had to pay for it.
Correct. Yeah.
So there's kind of the same situation where his house is at the end of the block, or at the end of the street towards a dead end, and it's the water or the sewer is out at the corner, and his sewer runs out to the street in front and then all the way down, and he has to pay for everything from his house down to the corner.
Hadn't heard about that. Who is that?
Well, there's 2 of them.
Oh, the one I'm aware of would be Shields' house.
That'd have been, that was an older area too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was an existing sewer. The thing that got me involved in it was the fact that they had a septic system. And the health department likes within the city limits, if feasible, to eliminate septic systems and go on public utilities. So that's the only reason that I got involved in it.
That's right.
Would, and this is another alternative, if it would work for everyone, is that, if Brad, you covered your 5,000 or whatever it is to come up to the, and Breens, you would cover up to the manhole, or to the main in the street, and we'd split the sewer 3 ways, split the water 2 ways, but the city would pay for all of it, then you'd have to pay it back, say over X amount of turns We wouldn't charge interest on it, wouldn't charge within a reasonable amount of time.
That would not be desirable. I don't think that's, I would think that we're just asking the city to do what, and I agree that you bring up one exception to it, but I would say precedence up to this, to bring a new home in that will be on the coffers for years and will be a good, thing for this city, similar to what you've asked for about, again, maybe not part of a large developer who's doing this. What are you gonna do with these other areas in town when somebody wants to build a new home, where we can have utilities on board? And, to put that on top of those people that wanna move to town, I think it's a bad message. It's also economically, didn't really even see this 30,000 coming, before. So I think that's a big enough pill to swallow right now. And that Brad can speak to his part about having to take on that sort of cost, in addition to the 6,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't be.
And I get that, and that's why I'm trying to make a way that you guys could pay it off slowly. And I'm not saying that cities, we'd split it still, and you wouldn't be covering all of it. You'd be covering a third or half, depending on what it is. Hoping, because yes, if it is a large development, the rest of the residents of the community aren't paying out of the utility bills and everything else for Riverwalk. That comes out of the specials that are put on. Same thing with River Bend or Prairie View. Every one of those developments had specials that were put on that paid for those utilities. So eventually, those homeowners that bought those lots, that was part of their cost. Riverbend just finally finished paying off their utilities, and Prairie View is coming up shortly, and we're just in the process of doing that with Riverwalk, is finding out how much each one of those lots will have to pay for the specials as a whole. So if that makes sense.
Well, I think the difference is that I believe that the city has paid for the main. And then the specials were to pay for the main to the curb stop. That falls on whoever bought that lot. And that's what we're willing to do here. That is what has happened before. And so I don't know that part of those specials were always to put in the main. And
No,
so,
the specials are always to put in the main, or the main infrastructure. Specials are always main infrastructure and what you're tying in, and then the residents are then required to pay from their home to the line for the sewer, and from their home to the curb stop for the water. And so, if we did this, we'd be setting a precedent, a new precedence is what we'd be saying, in that we would cover 100% of the main in front of anybody's home. And I think that would put us in a very hard situation to pay off and ask the rest of the residents to cover. That's my opinion on it. That's why I said, can we, if we did this, instead of putting a specials on and going through that special assessment, because then we'd have to get engineers and everything else involved to do this, if we said the city would pay that 68 plus the 13,604, those two bills for the mains to come up, you guys are responsible to come in and then pay off the rest over whatever we could work out in terms tonight, whether it's 10 years or 20 years, to pay off that main development.
so I had the opportunity to talk to all the commissioners beforehand, and as you know, that's not what I had understood. And so that wasn't precedent. Precedence that I had understood was that the city had paid for the main, and then from the main to the curb stop was. So totally open to that. Certainly aren't asking for something above and beyond what other people have ever had. But that's new information. So we want the project to be done. And I think we want to get rid of this septic system. Annie and Austin want to build a great house in Hillsboro. So,
And I don't want to stop you guys from building, and I want to help Brad out, but I also we can't put 1,600 residents to ask to pay for one project, and then it sets this precedent, so now we got to start paying for all these other projects down the road.
sure, that's new information to what we had
Right,
talked
and
about. Brad and I had not heard this.
No.
And as I talked to each one of you, I had not heard that. Jim, you and I had not understood it that way. Dave, when we met Friday morning, I don't think that's the way we understood, was that the city had paid for Maine, you know, up to, for all other citizens, and then it was up to you to pay for the main to the curb stop, so that's different.
Yeah, I guess this is enlightening to me too, so.
And I'd reached out to Mark Forsyth, same thing, and he understood the same thing, was that the city had always, had covered the cost of what it took to bring, utilities in the main.
Right, in which we do, but it's eventually special back to the homeowners
Did he?
that are gonna benefit.
Was he referring to that the city financed, the project went through the city, but in the end, everything is assessed to the,
Had not understood it that way.
okay.
Nope,
I'm
and I
sorry.
think when I talked to you guys,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
not that way. Yep.
When I suggested approaching the council was to at least see if they would participate in some type of cost share
Okay,
or some type of assessment. And maybe I didn't throw that out there, but that's,
that's all good.
yeah.
Because even when, when a Jordo project come in, if we would have did that, we would have had to go through engineering and then we would have bonded it, assessed it back to the Jordo properties. But he decided on his own that it was cheaper for him to put the infrastructure on his own, and then he's turning it back over to the city to take over. So then the city is reliable after that point.
So what kind of numbers or options are you,
Let me see if I can
what are some?
So on the project, you'd be responsible for that 5,740 is what the quote or whatever that part of it comes.
Yep.
And then Dr. Breen, yours would be around that 17,670 for that part of it. The city would cover the 82,524, and then over, if you want to set it at 15 years or 20 years, however you want to do it, pay it off on utility bills, because if we assess it that way, we wouldn't have to go through specials. And if at any time you would change hands, it would just have to be known to the next homeowner that that is part of theirs. But it would be 47,445 for Breen's and 28,713.33 for the Nelsons. Thereabouts, which is a third on the sewer and then half on that 17. So a third is 22,973, and then the water, a half is 6802.
So you're thinking have it put in similar to a special assessment then on their bill?
Correct.
Cause if we don't, the bills, specials are separate than the actual utility bill, so it would have to be a separate payment. I don't know.
Or a user fee or whatever you want to, however we can make it work, that it would be either once a year or if you want to do it monthly on the bill. Just trying to find the best way to help you guys out so that it's not one big lump sum for
Right.
everybody to.
I was just wondering if, like we did with similar with Terry, like Terry comes in and writes a separate check for his payment plan for the for the water main. Would it be something like that? I'd have to check with Banyan how we would implement it into the actual
And we
bill
can do it
itself.
however, but I mean,
But JR came up with, for Terry's, JR came up with an agreement that Terry and myself signed. And we had the stipulations in there of how the payment agreement, and obviously it was quite short because it's only like a 5-month agreement, but, what would work best, JR? I'd have to talk to Banyan and see if that would even be a possibility to put it in our utility system. I'm not sure.
and it wouldn't necessarily have to be in, but as long as it's paid off, then we know that it's
Right. And we
covered.
can set up some sort of amortization schedule, and obviously there wouldn't be any interest involved, but I'm just thinking payments separately might be,
It's a
easier.
contract. At the end of the day, it's just gonna be a contract, and how we account for it is
Right.
how you get to figure out, but
right,
we'll have
on
to
a
set terms.
spreadsheet.
they make the payments as we said.
And if you guys need time to talk to the rest of your family before you have a decision, whether it's tonight or,
Can
I know you guys wanna do it.
Can you email me what our total would be or anything like
can
that
write it down
possibly,
here.
so that I have that?
And just remember, guys, it's at the end of the evening, you have to sit down, I think, and crunch the numbers. You can have septic systems. If you feel that your septic systems would be cheaper to install and or upgrade, then that's your option. Annie and Austin are kind of at a hard place because they need the water. So, but, you still can have septic systems. Would be nice if you didn't, but
So are you allowed to install new septic systems in the city?
yes, I don't know if it's at the health department code or the plumbing code, there is a paragraph in there that states that if you're outside, if you're within 200 feet, you're asked to, and city utilities are there, that you're asked to hook onto those. Neither one of you are that close, so you're not covered. And then they also include in there the phrase, if it's economically feasible. So can they afford $60,000 to put sewer to their house? So really it's a code, but there isn't a lot of teeth in it. But they have a 200-foot cutoff there. So yes, you could still have septic systems within the city limits.
Well, and my thing is too, if you send over what you have there, Levi, and say, 'cause there's no way I could pay for something that big out of my pocket. If those numbers don't work, can they come back with a almost, I don't know if you call it a rebuttal or a counter as to what would fit their budget and be willing to work with them? Say maybe it couldn't be the 20 years, maybe it needs to be 30 or 40. I'm just asking to kind of help them out here.
And I talked to Ben Austin today and just went over his schedule for stuff he's doing for me. And he thought that it would be next Monday before they would start on that. So, which I guess it gives you a week to.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of thought, tonight we'd really want to know what direction we're going in.
I think so.
I guess the only other thing I would suggest, and maybe to a commissioner that might make the motion, is rather than a third, is could the city do half? Because we are cost sharing, we're doing something for economy of scale. Would the city be willing to pay for 50%? And, we would pay for 50%. So split the 25%, 25. That would be the one thing that I would request, then, hearing this as different.
How about,
So
or would the commissioners entertain, we cover, each of you would cover 20,000 of the sewer, and Dr. Breen, your family would cover 4,000 of the water. So you'd be at 24, and we'd cover the rest. We'd be 28. The city would pay 38,524.
What was my original number that you gave me?
Originally, it was 20. About 23,000.
The original one?
And if we said you paid that over 20 years, that's $1,000 a year. And like I said, we don't need an answer tonight. I mean, we could, as a commission, make a decision so that on the backside we can move forward with the project. We don't have to have a special meeting. I mean, is that something more that you could handle? Like I said, I wouldn't need an answer from you guys tonight necessarily, just if that's
I'd piggyback.
more
Yeah,
preferable.
I'd like to piggyback on if the commission said he would be willing to do 50% and then we cover the other.
And we would
50.
too. Yep.
On the sewer sewer, but how about, and then you'd cover all the water?
What you proposed, actually, it might not be 50%, it might be more of what you just proposed.
Yeah, it's not quite, but it's pretty, I mean, I just rounded off to nice even numbers for you guys to,
Yep.
to pay off over. So you're saying what I propose would be okay, or you wanna do the 50%?
What's the difference?
I don't know, I wasn't sure. It's a little different.
That's easy, I'm gonna say.
I didn't know the
Yeah, you're
numbers.
asking me a simple question there. You wanna pay more or less?
Right.
Hey, Jim, did you look at the layout of the sewer and stuff? Cause they're, like, I've seen this drawing in the back here, it looks like you're coming to the end of the pavement and then bringing your service out into the property.
Yeah, I think they talked now about bringing the water from this side,
No,
so
this-
that
this
you wouldn't
san-
have to
this-
cross
this
over.
sanitary line?
Yep,
Cause you're building on the second two lots,
Yep.
not the first one?
yep,
So you'd have to run a sewer service way back to there,
yep, up to lot 1.
and that would be, so if you're going with the sewer service, then you're probably at like 2% as opposed to 0.4% with the main. You're gonna get pretty shallow by the time you run service back that far.
Yeah, I just have to depend on Ben Noslet.
That's what Ben came up with.
Really?
You know, they're not losing any grade from the property line to the manhole because of the,
It goes up
It's high.
it goes up 2 feet, but there's still, there's a lot. The first lot, it wouldn't be built on, so their services would go past that first lot,
Yeah, up to lot
past
1.
down to. So if you stay in the right of way, or if you go on the property, you'd have to get an easement if you ever sold it, or.
Yeah, no. Because I own 3, so. Jelly croak, yep.
How many
So we're
kids-
good, thank you for
no
that
other
question.
kids are gonna
though,
show
so.
Any commissioners have, Nicole, or any of the other commissioners have any questions? Paul,
Yeah.
you gotta have a question, Paul.
Well, you've been throwing so many numbers out, I guess I'd like to know what number you're talking about here, and more precisely, so.
So the final number would be 38,524. The city would cover 20,000 would be covered by the Nelson family, and 24,000 would be covered by the Breen family.
And that's paying for which ones? The sewer,
That's paying for the mains.
main,
The
and,
mains.
No, just the mains, and
Just
then
the
they would
mains.
cover, each would cover their portion in to connect to the main. And then we can work out the terms or whatever else after that.
so the quotes that are,
25% would be
quotes that are in here, the
trying to-
68,
that's what I'm
that's,
trying to figure
that's for the main,
The main
correct?
sewer.
Main sewer only, okay?
water.
And then you have,
You know what's going
for the
on.
water service extension, now that's the water only,
That's the water only. yeah.
okay? And you have, the last one is water and sanitary sewer extension, where's that?
That is from the new home to the,
No, not for you. No,
the manhole
that's
where
coming
the,
from us.
where the end of the picture is gonna show.
And this,
that's their cost.
There.
and that's for Breens?
Yes.
Yep.
And there's, we don't have Nelson's in here for some reason, we're just missing that one?
No, he never, that was between
Okay.
himself and
Okay.
Brad. He never, I never
Gotcha.
saw it, so.
For what then, sorry?
This one?
It is in there, it's in
Yeah,
there.
it's, I emailed it too.
Oh, okay,
He
It's
did
just
give
not
it.
in here.
So that's
It's not in the printed
in
packet, but
there.
it is on.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
5,700.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought. I was
So
just
what would those
wondering.
numbers look like if we were to, that 68,000, to do 50% city, 50% us? I would think, that's what Brad was, we
Yeah,
were
that's
just
what I'm
talking
saying.
about, because I think that's, you know,
'Cause then that'd
as
be-
we talked
that'd-
about cost sharing, we were doing this together, you know, if we were cost sharing.
Cause then it'd be the city 34,000 and us splitting 34,000 for the sewer,
Yeah, yep,
which would put it at 17
Yeah.
for us and 17 for you for the sewer portion.
yep. I guess that's what I would ask, you know, for the, not knowing what we know now after this discussion.
Cause we're already hooked up to the city water. I don't know how that happened in the, you know, like, how did it happen where we were on city water but
They
not?
just, they ran a line years ago out there.
Okay.
And it's not in the street, it's back behind, behind your house to the west.
Okay.
There's actually a storm drain that runs through there.
Yes, yeah.
The waters within that are adjacent to that storm sewer. So.
Oh, okay. That's what I don't know where the watershed is.
All good curb stop. It's over in your neighbor.
So in that situation, the city would be at 41,262. Nelson's would be at the 17,230. And Breen's would be at $24,032.
That'd be the request.
I thought we were just dealing with the 68.
Yeah.
But there's also the water, unless they're gonna,
I didn't see anything separate.
they didn't understand that the 17,670 was, or the 13,604 was water main. They thought it was another portion for them.
So you're splitting the water service extension and the sanitary?
The sanitary would be at half, and the water also would be at half.
Which is the 13 or the
13,604.
I visited extensively with the parties that had issues with something like this before, and they showed a lot of concern about, you know, they didn't feel like they were treated well by the city at that time. I think that moving forward, you know, obviously we're probably going to take each situation case by case, but I think moving forward, I don't know if I really want that bad blood, so to speak, between our citizens and the city. If there's any way we can possibly make it work, I think we should do the 50, and I'll make that motion on the numbers that you presented there on the 13,604, our share, and the 68,920. If you want to clarify them numbers to Ashley, unless she already has them.
And does that include if they want, they can pay it off over?
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, obviously, yep. Whatever payment terms that they feel they can work with, within reason, obviously.
You're making a motion?
Yes, I make a motion, yep.
I'm gonna second your motion, Paul.
Been properly moved by Paul, seconded by Dave, to do a 50-50 split on the sewer, and then 50-50 split on the water main service. Third Avenue Southeast and Sixth Street Southeast. To service the 3002 Sixth Streets Northeast and the new home on Sixth Street. Is there any other discussion?
I just want to clarify that, you know, we're gonna, if these come about in the future, we'll have to take them, you know, one at a time and kind of really dissect them, so to speak. And but I just want you guys to know, and I hope that you, I'm sure you do appreciate, you know, this is something that, you know, potentially the city probably wouldn't have to do, but I think we want to have a good atmosphere for people to move to Hillsboro, build to Hillsboro, and if there's any way we can help our residents. I understand we might have some people that have concern about helping two individual residents, but you know, I guess if you're the one building the next house, you might be appreciative of how the city might work with you. I know it might be unpopular with some, but I think moving forward, it's a good thing for the city, just for relations with our residents.
And I'd like to agree with Paul. I think that's a good idea. In the past, we've had policies in council that have just, that there's no negotiation, I mean, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we're gonna do it. And I don't think that going on that we can't change those or get different policies to work better with residents, the current ones, so I agree with that.
Is there any other, Steve?
Nosted's putting a plan together and then submitting it to health department. They should, since it's a public utility going down the right of way, they should have drawings put together and submit to the health department for approval. So if Nosted's is designing it and putting it in, Ben can sign it as a PE, but.
I'm sure he's done that before, and I'll bring that up to him to make sure he takes care of that.
Okay. They might have some questions about that clean out distance and stuff like that.
Okay.
And the separation of the water and sewer.
And they're aware,
10
I'm sure
feet.
they're aware of that.
Well, he said he's digging, it says that he's digging a 10-foot trench,
No, I know.
putting both pipes in the same trench.
No, I think he knows what he's doing. I hope he knows what he's doing.
Is there any other discussion?
Just as a point of clarity, I think it's actually northeast, not southeast.
Yes.
Okay, well,
Did
just,
I read it southeast?
Yeah.
it says southeast on the bids, but
Oh, yeah, it is.
just so it's clear for our minutes at least. And then as a follow-up, is the motion to approve this estimate or to approve the final invoice as it'll appear? Because this is just a quote, just for clarity in the motion.
It's a good question.
Is that an estimate, Paul?
Estimate, yes.
But it'll be 50/50.
And if Ashley wants to clarify those numbers for the motion.
Change it to 50/50 instead of number. Just like 50% split between sewer, and Breen, and then water. Or,
That saved us a few thousand.
I think sewer and then water would be just between 50/50 split between the city. I would say to take off that we may want to extend an olive branch to the other resident, that if this does come up and he has an issue in the future, that we should probably, we'll work with him as we move forward.
I agree.
All right. Any other discussion? Dave?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Yes for me. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim, for helping us walk through this, and all the commissioners for taking a hearing to us, and appreciate this effort. So, thank you for all your service. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Make sure that you guys fill out all the extra paperwork that comes along for rebates and so on and so forth for the new home. There is quite a few. All right. We have 2 items left. One is the electrical rate ordinance. Are we just clarifying on that one? Is that the?
So in the past, the city actually would pass a new ordinance each time electrical rates were changed, and I think it's been a number of years since that's happened. I couldn't tell you when, but ever since we've updated our ordinance, we made the master copy of ordinances, and we've set it so that we can just change it by resolution. So rather than having to go through the formal ordinance procedure, you can just change it by resolution. This just allows us to do that.
And the other ones are that way?
Yep, the other ones are already set that way.
Just electrical just got missed.
Yep, correct.
Gotcha. Do I have an approval then for the first reading of the electrical rate ordinance 531?
So moved.
Moved by Paul, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nicole. All those, Nicole?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And a yes for me. The bill that I pulled out was for HEDC. It's not that I don't want to give money to HEDC. But if you look on our fiscal statement, that fund is currently at 35,360.74 in the negative. So until we write the check, I just want to make sure that we get it straightened out, that we didn't overspend or underspend. And if we did overpay, we just gotta make sure it gets cleared up before the payments are made
Is that
on the sales tax. No, that's out of Fund 214, which is this, it is the general sales tax fund that you would get every, the 0.5%, yeah. Because for some reason, that should be an in and out fund.
Mhm.
and for some reason it's $35,000 in the negative, so we just need to figure it out before we write.
Well, I think that has to do with, last fall, Julie had she didn't have the. Yep, it wasn't figured out correctly, and so we put together a formula, and now we have a spreadsheet. So last fall, we actually owed them several thousands of dollars, so it actually came out this year. We had to fix our we had to fix our wrong.
It was monies from last year.
Right, it was money from last year that got spent
I know what you're talking about.
this year, and it was like, I can't remember, like $10,000 or $12,000 that we had been withholding from them.
Okay.
You were-
So, year to date, that would be why it would be off, is because, it should have been paid out last year, but it wasn't. And so the year-to-date column in the fund statement sheets is going to be off, since we took it out of this year, but we only budgeted a certain amount. Does that make sense?
Right. So it just means,
Whatever you said.
which means we need, no, I just wanted to make sure, so all we really need to do is a transfer from the 212 into 214 to pay the check.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can do that with a motion.
Do I have a
That's-
motion to first approve that transfer
So moved.
and to approve this check?
So I make a motion to do the transfer and approve the check for, I don't know what the amount is.
I'll second.
12,910.37.
That's my motion.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Nicole. Any other discussion? Mike?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Any yes for me? Motion carries. I will sign the check. I just wanted to
Just-
make sure we
yeah.
were,
I think the thing was, is back when they first started, they weren't figuring the 0.5% properly.
Right.
And then we went and bugged them enough, and then
We
but
gotta-
like I said, I just want to make
Figure
sure
it
that
out.
it's,
Mark finally was able to find a way to explain it to him better than I could, so.
Yeah.
is there anybody else that would like to address the commission tonight? And I brought water for everybody because I thought we were going to be longer, and here we'll be done before 8.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.